Hello, my name is Steve Gardella. I am a National Intelligence Collection Officer with the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, and this is a briefing meant to provide details of the intelligence collection plan to determine Iranian nuclear weapon capabilities. So normally I would like to go through some of the history, but for the sake of brevity, we'll jump right into the intelligence collection plan itself. While we were focusing on the steps for determining resource availability and capability and then tasking resources, in terms of collection, there still is important context and strategic value in mentioning the other steps. So the start of any collection process will include receiving and analyzing requirements that have been set out in the request for this ICP. The key intelligence questions that our collection will be addressing here, as brought forth by the President and the Cabinet, is first, what capabilities does the Iranian government have in terms of nuclear proliferation? And what can and should the intelligence community be doing to combat and disrupt the development of a nuclear-capable rogue state similar to North Korea? So these questions are going to be really important drivers for what information we seek and how we go about collecting that information. Aligning our goals with the stated requirements is vital in ensuring that we address the issues we specifically seek to address. The next steps will be determining the resource availability and capability. For this, the most logical way to represent the availability and capability of resources will be to list the intelligence agencies that will be responsible for each of the 5 collection disciplines. So, for geospatial intelligence, the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, or NGA, will be the primary organization responsible. For measurement and signature intelligence, the Defense Intelligence Agency, or DIA, and the NGA will be working in tandem. For signals intelligence, the National Security Agency, or NSA, and the National Reconnaissance Organization, or NRO, will be heading that. For human intelligence, it's going to be a little bit more of a collaboration where you're going to have the Central Intelligence Agency, or the CIA, along with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, or the FBI, the DIA, the Drug Enforcement Administration, or the DEA, and the State Department, all working in tandem through a tiered approach. And for open source intelligence, it's going to be routed directly through the CIA, but agencies should definitely have the latitude to conduct their own open source intelligence research as needed. So having each member of the intelligence community responsible for a specific discipline will help allocate resources most efficiently, as the agencies assigned will be working in the capacity that they are best suited for. As stated above, when tasking resources, the breakdown will be each intelligence collection discipline. So starting with GeoInt, the NGA will be tasked to obtain the most up-to-date geospatial information about Iranian nuclear sites, both known and suspected. Knowing that in recent years the Iranian government has been vocal about wanting to expand its nuclear program, the likelihood of new uranium mining locations, reactor sites, and enrichment facilities is high. Along with tracking sites that are specific to nuclear material, geospatial information regarding missile production facilities will be similarly crucial in determining the total Iranian nuclear weapon capability level. This tasking is challenging not only because Iran is a hostile foreign power, but because they're obviously going to seek to obfuscate their nuclear activities. Iran has previously used national barriers and camouflage to conceal nuclear infrastructure, and I don't see that changing, so the limitations of GeoInt will of course have to be supplemented by other disciplines. And one of those actually will be our next is MASINT. So the DIA, and to a lesser extent, the NGA, will be responsible for MASINT collection. As we were talking about before, GeoInt limitations will require assistance, and MASINT is kind of a perfect fit and a particularly good partner for this Iranian nuclear issue. Verification of nuclear activities will be paramount for both situational awareness and strike readiness. While lethal military action should be considered a last resort here, understanding which nuclear production sites are locations are most probable to be producing nuclear material for weapons manufacture is going to be important. Outside of military action alone, the DIA's MASINT tasking will provide a valuable validation tool for information collected from other intelligence disciplines. While much of the detection capabilities require proximity and access directly to nuclear facilities. Some programs do allow for the detection of nuclear detonations from space. Specifically, the Integrated Operational Nuclear Detection System will be a key data set for verifying testing of nuclear weapons by Iran. Moving on to SIGINT, the NSA and NRO will be the lead agencies for this collection discipline because they have by far the most experience and technical expertise. Deploying SIGINT strategies will provide valuable insight both into what is currently being done with the Iranian nuclear program as well as the plans for potential expansion. Luckily, this falls well within the wheelhouse of the NSA and NRO, and there will probably be fewer questions of legality and policy when it comes to the collection of signals. Targeting appropriate communication channels and devices to collect on will be key to securing a steady flow of relevant information that will provide adequate coverage. So this could also provide insight into the extent of which other international actors are assisting the development of Iran's nuclear program. While many nations deny involvement in the program, having the ability to intercept communications will provide higher confidence in intelligence products that might say otherwise. Moving on to HUMINT, while many of these disciplines should be limited to those with the greatest breadth of experience, in my opinion, HUMINT is an area that requires resource-intensive process that relies heavily on the skills of professionals and is entirely contingent on a source's placement, access, willingness, and suitability. Any one of those factors could exclude a source from being valuable, so opening our aperture here will help cast a wider net. To keep it still specific enough, there will be a tiered approach with the primary agencies responsible for HUMINT being the CIA internationally and the FBI domestically. In the second tier, so to speak, there will be the DIA, DEA, and State Department to assist with finding and developing sources. So while it's important to be specific, having a deep roster of sources will serve the intelligence community well here. Recruitment has to be aggressive and diverse, targeting all facets of the production cycle, including workers at sites where the material is collected and processed, political appointees both within Iran and just within the region, aid workers who might have access to areas that we simply would not otherwise, people that could reside in the areas of interest, etc. So the DIA and State Department will help with the more traditional targets, but something where you might kind of perk up a little bit when you hear the DEA thinking, I feel that they could provide something unorthodox but potentially very important. So while this ICP is not necessarily concerned with drug interdiction, it could be important to have information in that realm because covert transportation and detection evasion is such a large part of narco trafficking that it could provide insight into the potential channels for covert action within the nuclear area. So finally, we'll talk about OSINT, which will be primarily for the CIA, but will be conducted by all of the agencies with discretion and on a basis of need. So because OSINT can present itself in so many different ways, knowing where to look for each agency will be particularly important. And it's additionally difficult to create specific tasking with regards to OSINT because what can be found through open source is so varied and changed from minute to minute. But what we really need here is comprehensive and robust information streams. So to maintain centralization, OSINT efforts will be routed through the Open Source Center, which operates through the Director of National Intelligence, but falls under the purview of the Director of the CIA. So from an outside perspective, this intelligence collection strategy can seem like it heavily relies on separate systems to eventually work cohesively, but given each of these taskings to the agency that has its strength, I think is a way we can have the most informative outcome. So the final portions of this intelligence collection plan would be to evaluate the reporting that we received and eventually updating the collection planning and starting the cycle all over again. While these aren't necessarily the focus of this briefing, it's important to note that any process for intelligence collection, doing that legwork at the end is vital because it allows the intelligence community to consider what information has been returned and ways in which to enhance the process to net more positive results. So one thing I'll leave you with is that currently Iran's stockpile of uranium enriched to 60% has grown to 43.3 kilograms. which represented an increase of nearly 10 kilograms compared to 3 months ago, and that was from earlier in 2022. It's imperative that we get on this, work hard on it, because while that 60% threshold is not quite weapons grade, the jump from 60% to what is often considered the standard for nuclear weapons at 90% is well within Iran's technical capability, and the more we can figure out about their program, the better we can combat it. So thank you for listening to this briefing, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.